Hey everyone. Right, where are we? So hi, it's great to be here. This is my second time in Korea. I was actually here in 2002 for the FIFA World Cup. In my previous life as a software engineer at EA Sports, I was lucky enough to be able to win a raffle ticket to come for the semi-final between South Korea and Germany. Just a one-day trip, so it's great to be here for a bit longer. So yeah, my background, most of my professional career was video games. Worked for EA Sports, did 20 games, FIFA, NBA, NHL, all sorts. And the peak of my career there was where I was a label software architect for EA Sports, so that was all technologies, all games and everything. And I got involved with the Ethereum community in 2014. I'd been sort of following along a little bit in blockchain as a whole the year before, but really got active in 2015. And the first thing I was doing was actually seeing if I could get Ethereum running on my smartwatch. Got my Samsung Gear S3 here. That's where I started. Really with the thought that, maybe at some point that could turn into some kind of job for a startup somewhere. Maybe I could get a blockchain job of some kind. But it actually turned into getting a role at the Ethereum Foundation, where I was working on the CPP Ethereum client. I was at the foundation at the time of the DAO fork, so I will be doing a Q&A at the end. Ask me anything. If you want to ask me anything, please do. Happy to talk about any of that. I've been in many camps. So after the foundation there, I was also working to see if we could get that client relicensed so that we could get that into Hyperledger, trying to build bridges between Hyperledger and Ethereum back in 2016. And after that relicensing attempt failed, I went and joined Consensus and helped to found the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. Spoke at the launch, and I was involved in the groups there. And then I'm now blockchain lead for Quant Fury, which is a mobile trading app. I'm community ambassador for Crypto Chicks, which is a non-profit working towards gender balance in blockchain. And I stood for election this year again for Hyperledger, and I do all sorts of different things. Ongoing involvement with Ethereum community, enterprise community, all sorts. I'm a bridge builder. So, yeah, winners and losers. There can be only one, as was said in Highlander. Very few things in life are really zero-sum, and I'd certainly say that that's not the case for blockchain right now. We're in very, very early days. Nobody really knows what's going to work, and lots of people are trying lots and lots of different things, and I think they're usually all great. So just some sort of quotes along this line from April this year. Emin Gunn Sir said, "No single coin will moon by itself. Either the entire ensemble goes up together, or they all mop the floor, mired in regulations, scams, and lawsuits. It's essential for the communities to work together." This was said in this April. Goodness me, if you look at the markets the last month or so, I think that shows that truth even more than anything, is that there's an awful lot of correlation between all of these assets, really, and, blockchain is going to work or it's not going to work. Finding ways that we can work together to support each other is probably an awful lot more beneficial than it is for us to fight each other. Another article about this kind of time by a guy called Kent Barton, this great article called "Divided We Fall, the Irrational Insanity of Crypto Tribalism." Calm, academic, respectful discussion is all too often substituted with emotional, personal attacks and overly simplified narratives. Consider how adherents from opposing groups tend to view these projects. Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. Ethereum is a centralized cult. EOS is scammy vaporware. Cardano is scammy vaporware. Bitcoin Cash is a malicious fork led by Satan himself. To an outsider, it must seem ludicrous to watch countless smart minds working on blockchain technology, developers, entrepreneurs, and other enthusiasts gifted with the ability to think outside the box and see a vision for a better future descend into Nicene bickering. I can never say that word. But yeah, I mean, I think the point's quite clear. We've got a lot of fantastic, brilliant people, both technologists and business people, and we just waste innumerable energy just shouting at each other and arguing rather than building. This May, I got to meet Anthony for the first time in Toronto for EdCon, where he gave a talk on Ethereum Classic. And again, I agree with Emin completely. It was absolutely fantastic to hear about what's happening in Classic, because there's a whole lot of good work happening. But what you have is communities that don't know each other, people that don't talk to each other, even though they're working on very similar things. Basically based on ego, based on past conflicts, disagreements, and really this sort of tribal view that someone has to lose for somebody to win, which is really not the case. So yeah, I mean, since November, as I'm saying here, you know, I've engaged in some form with all of these. Because really, you know, pretty much if you talk to anyone in blockchain, we've all really got a lot of commonality in terms of what we're aiming for. You know, we want a more decentralized future, you know, a fairer set of underlying technologies. And we're awfully lot better served by collaborating on the things that we have in common and working independently on the pieces that we don't, but not shouting at each other about it at the same time. Just let that stuff go. Earlier this year, I was at Doge Khan, which was fantastic. Last year, where the markets were peaking, all of a sudden Doge was worth a load of money. And some generous Doge millionaires decided that what they should do with that is quick, spend the money. Spend the money and do stuff quick before it dives. And one of the things that was a winning thing, because they basically had grants, a competition, and it was like, right, we should do a Doge conference, a Doge unconference. So we did. So we had Doge Con in Vancouver. At the Ethereum Community Conference in March of this year in Paris, I gave a longer presentation, which was really about a call for an end to tribalism within Ethereum, and really talking about the different factions that there are within Ethereum itself, let alone coming out to Classic. And yeah, I mean, I basically talked about this you know, this human inclination that we have to, you know, to act tribally, to treat these projects as though it's a team sport and you've got to cheer for your team and boo for the others. And really sort of characterizing, well, you know, through the different sort of character conflicts that there have been within Ethereum as a whole, you know, we've ended up with these factions even within Ethereum, you know, where you know, you've got Vitalik at the foundation, you know, and he's a dictator, you know, he single-handedly bailed out the DAO. It's, you know, he did all that. Or you know, for Cardano and Mantis and Charles, you know, Charles is the Emmanuel Goldstein character of you know, if you've read 1984, you know, you have to have the enemy who is to blame for everything, you know. So Charles has been utterly demonized within Ethereum. It's madness. Or you know, Joe Lubin, you know, he's an empire builder who only cares about money. You know, Consensus are just trying to guerrilla the world. Or Gab at Parity and the Web3 Foundation. You know, you've got this, you know, he's egotistical and non-collaborative. And, you know, Anthony Diorio, again, is an opportunist who only cares about money. And, you know, and Hyperledger and the EA, myself and others involved, you know, we're all trying to co-opt Ethereum for the banks, obviously. And I mean, you know, all of these, you know, they're just demonization. You know, it's bullshit. You know, the truth is that different people have got different views of the world, and what happens is that, you know, if people have a different view of the world and different priorities, well, they do things that you wouldn't do. And it's very easy to think, well, look at them. You know, they're mad or they're bad. You know, they must be crazy or they must be evil. Well, no, they're just acting on a different set of priorities. And if you look across nearly all of the blockchain projects, what you've really got is just different people exploring different approaches. You know, and well, why collaborate? You know, aren't we going to be better alone? We're going to win everything if we don't collaborate. But as Bill Joy of Sun said, you know, no matter who you are, most of the smartest people work for someone else. And it doesn't matter how large an enterprise that you're running. You know, this is true even for the largest tech companies. You know, even if you're working for Google or Facebook or Apple, you know, the fact is, even there are more smart people that don't work for them than do work for them. So for nearly all large-scale technical projects, the fact is that you're an awful lot better building them together. And I mean, this is really where the whole open source movement has come from. You know, you look at the success that you've had with Linux or the internet or the web. You know, pretty much all large-scale systems are built in an open, collaborative way. You know, they're not proprietary. They're not constrained to a single body, because it just doesn't work as well. And yeah, you know, in the main, there are no silver bullets. You know, most systems, they've just got engineering trade-offs. You know, well, do you want, you know, so here is, you know, a triangle which Vlad did recently, which is, you know, Vlad's triangle talking about characteristics of different consensus protocols. You know, that you've really got this, you know, this trade-off here between overhead and latency and you know, and decentralization. You know, and there's no magic answers. You know, nobody's going to come up with, you know, here is the single algorithm that solves everything. You know, the one chain to rule them all. You know, it's just never going to happen. What you're going to have is you're going to have a variety of different technologies and different protocols, and they're all going to, you know, fit together into some kind of mush. You know, be that public or private, and hopefully all of these things are going to mesh together into a way that means that they can talk together. So yeah, just talking about some, you know, some interesting kind of work that I've been sort of watching in general. So, you know, you have public Ethereum clients. You know, Geth and Parity have obviously been the main ones for a long time. Parity, interestingly, spanning Ethereum and Ethereum Classic from day one, where you had the split between Geth and Geth Classic. But then what you now have is Mantis, where IOHK, you know, have spent all of this time, you know, building a beautiful new Scala client from scratch, and then now that's going to be supporting Ethereum as well. You know, so these imagined hard lines, you know, not so hard there anymore. Then you have new work happening on sharding clients, and also, you have these enterprise Ethereum clients. So yeah, you know, I spent a year there working on the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, really working with, you know, some of the largest companies in the world. And some people would say, well, God, you know, are you a complete sellout? You know, how can you talk to these people? You know, why on earth would a bank want to be involved with that? You know, why would JP Morgan be, you know, having, you know, working on quorum? And I mean, I think the truth is that that on a technical basis, you have pretty much the same kind of requirements for something which is public network versus something which is a consortium or private chain. You know, why would a bank use a blockchain? Well, you know, it's not to change their business model. It's not to open anything up. It's not necessarily going to be user-facing at all. You know, it's really about cost minimization and saying, well, let's replace these swathes of incredible expensive, you know, mainframes and Swift and all of this mess with something a lot simpler. It's not, you know, it's not to make things better for the consumers in any way, but the fact is that the technology is the same. So I mean, to my mind, the reason I wanted to get involved with Enterprise Ethereum is, well, I want this stuff to be everywhere. You know, I want blockchain to be in every pore of the world, down to the smallest devices, and, you know, running the backbone of the world. And I would way prefer these large companies to pay for that work than a bunch of volunteers, trying to do our best. So partnering with anyone and everyone is absolutely the way to move the tech forward. And I mean, you have got a little bit of a bit of a nuclear arms race going on, I think, as well, where a lot of the financial institutions, well, it's kind of like, this might well kill a lot of their business models, but if they don't engage first, then they're going to die first. So they have to engage. Lots happening on sidechains, and I say sidechains, I mean, that's a bit of a sloppy term. You have state channels and various different types there. Sidechains coming on ETC dev side, but lots of other interesting consensus patterns. So Loom and POA network, exploring an alternate consensus, but still on an Ethereum-based protocol, which really is pretty much what's happening on the enterprise side. If you look at Quorum there, so Quorum was a collaboration between JP Morgan and Jeff Wilker, the Geth lead, basically on building a permissioned variant of Ethereum that added private transactions. Really because they're in a regulated industry where having transactions out in the open, they just can't do that. But they wanted to use the Ethereum tech, so off we go. Scalability pieces are popping up in all kinds of different dimensions. I mean, the other one I forgot to mention there is Plasma. But off-chain as well, with TrueBit. And then interchain, increasingly important, is really the recognition that, we're not going to have a single monolithic chain for the world. That's no more likely than, when the relational database was invented in the 70s. Well, great, let's have a world database. Would you like to add some rows to the database? That can obviously never scale. You have this trade-off between throughput and latency, and the answer to scalability is going to have more of them. Have more of them in parallel, and then those become eventually, eventual consistency there. Lots of iteration happening on the virtual machine as well, both with EWASM, Yella, never quite know how to say it. There's some interesting work happening that R3 are doing within Corda on getting the Java virtual machine itself to be deterministic. So the JVM there being the underlying piece to Corda, to Mantis, but also to Pantheon, which is a new client that Consensus are building. And then there's Sputnik VM as well. So, and all of this work is really just, stuff happening within Ethereum, Aetherium Classic, Ethereum and friends. Because even with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, there's a number of companies that join there that have their own chains. I think people think that, that people are Ethereum maximalists more than actually really is the case. Most of the people that I've met within the Ethereum development community would totally work on something else if there was something better. We are where we are because it's the best we have at the moment, and then we'll have something better. And I don't think we're going to get too many people just sticking their heels in and never moving forward. So say something as simple as the EVM. The EVM, it's got a lot of problems. Of course it has. So if we get to something better, I'm sure we'll move. Organizationally, there's lots of sort of interesting moving parts right now that, if you look at the whole sort of ecosystem, it doesn't quite hang together. It hangs together better than it did a couple of years ago, where you only had the Ethereum Foundation. At the start, after the crowdfund in 2014, pretty much the Ethereum Foundation was driving everything. You had development of the C++ client, of the Go client, of the Python client, of the yellow paper, and all of these things were happening in parallel, and everything was there. And I mean, over time, that's just drained away to the point where the foundation itself is really quite small. It's one of many players in the landscape. As of March of this year, the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians was started, whimsically named group of individuals seeking to work in an IETF-like open way where you have really a recognition that the development of these protocols is larger than any given legal entity. This is a thing for the whole of humanity. It's something on a par with the internet or the web, and that you really can't have any single group running and controlling things. And there really has been the perception that is the Ethereum Foundation, that there is this dictatorial single control. And maybe at the start that was true, but that really isn't the case anymore. You have a large number of projects and companies and individuals in the ecosystem, and even down at the core developer level. Even just with, say, Parity, where you've got Gavin Wood having left the foundation, and there you go. You've got a balance between those two, but there's an awful lot more than 2 clients, and I think there's going to be even more in the coming years. We're really going to go. We're really at the point where I'd say with both Mantis from IOHK and Pantheon from Consensus, we're really sort of at the point where you're getting these professional teams coming in. You're getting large, big, professional software engineering teams building products, building real products that are going to have real companies building on top of them. So the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians is really, it's this open forum for anyone to get involved and engage with protocol development. I've talked about the EEA, and there's a spec out of that, and that's an ongoing kind of standardization beginnings kind of effort. You have Hyperledger, which is the Linux Foundation project, which is an umbrella for open source blockchain projects. So unlike the EEA, which is a standards body, Hyperledger is really about open source code development. And there is, as well as Fabric and Sawtooth there from IBM and Intel, the main players behind that, you've also got Ethereum virtual machine development happening within that. You've got these technologies starting to breed together within that. And I think we're going to get an awful lot more Ethereum family things popping into that as well. You've also got second level kind of organizations starting to pop up. So DIF is the Decentralized Identity Foundation. So self-sovereign identity is obviously a really major use case that's being built on top of all kinds of different tech stacks. The Trusted IoT Alliance, obviously IoT, massive use case. Cody is going to be talking a little bit about Classic for IoT. Accord project is a legal consortium, but all of these are really, they're kind of level 2, where people are actually trying to build real things on top of blockchain stacks now, and are really sort of saying, well, I don't want to have to pick an answer. I don't want to have the first question being, well, what's your stack? Are you using this? Are you using that? Basically tie yourself into a given stack. We've really got this whole area of like middleware and frameworks and everything, and real maturity of the stack that's people are wanting to start having. It's a massive pain in the arse to develop blockchain applications right now. You really want to get to the same kind of developer experience as you'd have for building a web app, and that just isn't there, but it's brewing up. And then on these worldwide standard bodies like IETF for the internet, or W3C for web, or the ISO standards group and ICANN for domains. There's increasing engagement into those groups from blockchain, either in terms of sort of community groups or early research, but that stuff is really brewing up, and I think that's going to become very, very prevalent over the next couple of years, where really, it's almost like a path to boring. If you can make blockchain as boring as databases, like that's success. It shouldn't be interesting. It should just be foundational, and it just works. And we're not there yet. John Walpert is a guy I really like. He was previously the sort of the number 2 at IBM Blockchain. He was a key guy behind Fabric, but he now works for Consensus. So yeah, he wrote a great article a month or 2 ago talking about the idea of stateful internet, trying to characterize blockchain as perhaps what we're trying to get to with blockchain is really to get to a stateful internet. As in the internet and the web as it exists right now, yeah, we can pass messages around, we can pass content around, but there's no state. All of the state just lives within siloed databases. There, it isn't globally part of it there. So yeah, he says, by 2020, the concept of public versus private blockchain networks will be relegated to a historic footnote. We will not pit public networks against private networks. Instead, there will be public transactions and private transactions, confidential contracts and open contracts, and they'll coordinate their scope across bilateral, multilateral, and public environments depending on the needs of users, just as messages today pass between public and private environments using common internet protocols. In this world, we can transact peer-to-peer, conduct completely confidential agreements, and seamlessly coordinate public and private data, business rules, and users in minutes without having to set up different blockchain infrastructure for each group or use case. Connect the patterns, forget the flags. I wish we could take all the good work out there, the patterns each team in the blockchain space has explored for the last several years, and lop off all the brands, the flags, the preciousness we all get when looking at our own babies. We'd see it as a bag full of Legos, a set of potential standards converging on what we really need in order to build awesome new applications that transcend the limitations and troubling central control issues of client-server, stateful internet. And I really like his vision there. Because I think there's just so much cutthroat competition at the moment in the space, and it's just way too early. You could pretty much just kill everything right now, and it would make hardly any impact on the actual world economy, because there aren't live production systems, because we're not done yet. It's not good enough yet. But I believe it really will be. But being precious about the things that we've made, rather than looking at the technology as a whole, I think really does us all a real disservice. So yeah, please, I'd love to take questions about anything. Little note there, I was at the foundation at the time of the DAO fork. If you want to ask about that, please do. Thank you all.
All right, Bob, I got a question for you. So
how's this going? I've got a question for you first. How's that going?
That's for translation.
Yes.
Okay.
Like that?
I guess so. I haven't actually put it on. Technology is hard. So it seems like we're going to have maybe even more ways to bridge our cryptocurrencies than cryptocurrencies themselves. Going back to your slide there. So what are you going to do though or what needs to be done in order to avoid that tribalism? Because we will have all these ways to bridge these currencies, but if Bitcoin still doesn't like Ethereum and Ethereum doesn't like Aetherium Classic, like what are we gonna do about that?
Well, I don't think any of that is necessarily going to go away. You look at the world. How many countries are there in the world? Should those all go away? You have got lots of cultural and historical differences between people. People have got different preferences and likes, and I don't think that means you've got to homogenize all of that out. I think what we really need though is some foundational interoperability. Because most people in the world, they don't care. They just want things to be cheap and fast and good and work. I think that's really where you're going to see blockchain technology really make an impact, is people don't even know it's there. they're just like, hey, I've got this cool app and I can do stuff I couldn't do before. Well, brilliant. Or it's cheaper or better or meets some data sovereignty need. Or great, I've got this, social media setup and, it's, not got a single, company controlling that. So, I mean, I think that's one thing, is you will have that interoperability. The other thing I think will happen, though, is I don't think you're going to have, huge numbers of different technologies. I think what you will have is lots of different instances of those. But if you, for example, look at, say, all of the different Bitcoin forks, well, those could all run on the same code base, right? You don't need different development teams for all of those. Or the same on the Ethereum side, looking at all those different consensus pieces. Well, if you've got suitably modular code bases and decent architectures and plugins and everything, you don't need everyone to be developing the whole stack. I think that's where we have been, right, is starting at that tribal point of view and saying, well, you guys are idiots, so fuck you, I'm going to go and do all of the work myself, even though most of it's going to be nearly the same, as opposed to going, can we have some parameters? And I'm going to run with these, and you're going to run with those. I think it's really getting away from that, that maximalist point of view of thinking, well, we're going to win and you're going to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think, too, the majority of people, they're ultimately not going to care too much, like Bob said, about what they're using. The important part is getting it right so that when they are using blockchain, they're using a blockchain and not, something else.
Yeah, and I mean, well, think of mobile phones. Like, everyone using mobile phones now. How much do people know about what's inside the tech stack? They don't care. No. Yeah. Woo. No.
Yeah, even us, I don't know how my phone works on a super deep level, even though I'm constantly working in tech.
Do you know how your car works? Could you make your own spark plug?
You press the gas and it goes.
Yeah. So, I think ultimately most people care about, well, what does this thing do to me? What characteristics has this got? What does this do for me? Well, look, it gives you sovereignty of your own money. It's faster, it's cheaper. Like nobody cares if it's tech A or tech B in the end, apart from the geeks.
Absolutely. So does anybody else have any questions? Oh, we got some questions over here. And over there.
Hi. I don't have a question, actually. Want to say fantastic talk.
Thank you.
Want to say thank you for delivering a positive message. Thank you for building bridges. I would be curious if you have any advice for this community, specific to how to build bridges with the ETH community.
Talk to me. I mean, in general, I'd say, build stuff, do stuff, find people who are working on similar projects, talk to them, work together, collaborate. I think the cooperative has been fantastic. Having Anthony, coming to EdCon was awesome. We should totally have more of that. When I came, when I said on Twitter I was coming to this, I was like, well, hey, and it would be great if a bunch of classic people come to DevCon. Just turn up at each other's parties, right? Don't ask for permission. Just turn up. Just rock up. I mean, the other thing I'd say is that in terms of these sort of standardization efforts and everything, I think it's come to the table. These things are going to be happening, in standards communities. You've got really sort of integration into existing open source projects and standards and everything, and obviously lots of stuff happening on the financial side in terms of regulation, and it's really just talk to everyone. We've got we've got these gaps in the middle, and I'd say, you know, rather than thinking, well, you know, these gaps are there for malicious reasons, you know, I think they're not. It's just everyone's just flailing around, like trying to work out how the things work and how things go together, and you know, if things are, you know, look stupid or wrong, they probably just are. You know, it's probably not for any nefarious reason. It's just, you know, a bunch of amateurs trying to make the thing work. You know, that's really how I'd characterize the beginnings of Ethereum was, well, you know, here's an idea. It's a complete moonshot. You know, is it going to work? Nobody knew. Just, right, you know, here's a bunch of 8 dudes, just didn't know each other, trying to make this thing happen, and, you know, had their character conflicts and disagreements, and, you know, a few years on we go.
There was never any disagreements.
We're just never any disagreements.
Never, none,
no.
Zero.
But it's, you know, it's just a bunch of people, and it's ego and money, and what can you do? You know, just don't assume malice, and just talk to people, and, you know, act in good faith, and you know, and good things happen.
All right, great. And one more question, and then we're going to go to lunch.
What's the difference between private blockchains and normal permissioned databases?
Sorry, I didn't see. Who asked that?
Oh.
Where am I looking?
Colby. Hey, right here.
Oh, right.
Here I am.
What's the difference?
Yes.
The difference in general is, I mean, have you ever worked for a large company?
No, I have not.
Different groups of a large company, different branches, different locations, they might as well be different companies for the amount they trust each other. So, you know, normally a definition of a private blockchain that people would give is a private blockchain is within a given company, usually, where a consortium blockchain would be, you know, a set of collaborating companies. I think, you know, private blockchains are less useful than consortium, but I mean, essentially, it's the same as anything else. Well, what are blockchains good for? Well, you know, they're good for getting to a common source of truth amongst a set of mutually distrustful actors. And humans just distrust each other. It doesn't matter whether you have a legal entity or not. They still don't trust each other. You know, those idiots at IT are running it. They're going to fuck it up. Don't let them do it. You know, oh, the account people are doing it. Well, they don't know about, you know, and so that's really the answer is you know, probably less value within a single company. I think you've got huge value in a consortium setup, though. And I think that's really where those techs are being used more than anything is, say, you know, a set of financial institutions within a given country, or a set of, you know, say on supply chain, you know, huge use cases you have in supply chain where you often have a complex web of hundreds or thousands of different companies that are, you know, passing orders up and down, and, you know, getting to a set of truth within that is of huge benefit, you know, and it's not because anyone's trying to screw anyone else. It's just the systems are that crap, you know, that you've just really got the reconciliation between all of these different systems. So, and yeah, you could say, well, can't you just get, you know, couldn't you just do that with a database? But what you end up with then is well, some company ends up running that for everyone, right? You know, you end up with a Swift or a DTCC or whatever, or an Equifax, you know, and you go, yeah, Equifax will just do it all. Well, yeah, they will. Yeah. So really, I guess that's the answer is really, well, humans just don't trust each other. That's how humans work. So having trust minimization, or, you know, a common source of truth across a set of parties, you know, that has applications at all of those different micro and macro scales. Obviously, like globally, well, there you go. That's the knockout blow if you can do something globally. But the fact is that getting to global consensus is an incredibly expensive operation. You know, proof of work being the one proven way of really doing that in a permissionless way right now. But yeah, it's really just a scale thing. Is that these patterns work at all of those scales, and they've got different pros and cons. The other thing that you get often, you know, within that private or consortium setup is that you do often have a common legal thing that's wrapping that. You know, maybe you're all members of a given consortium group, and you've all, you have some legal recourse if someone's shown to have, cheated or whatever.
Yeah.
That you've got great proof as well. Here you go. You've got this immutable record. Look, you guys didn't do the thing that you said. I can go and sue you or whatever. At the global scale, you often don't have that consistency of real-world legal stuff to wrap that. But within those more constrained forms, you can assume certain things, and that can give you a real big optimization of saying, well, if there is a dispute, well, look, you can go and sue them. And the same thing on the consensus is, well, we're all running validators. We can just write it in the contract. All of the members have to run a validator node. So great, well, we don't have to compensate miners, and we can run a faster consensus. It can be 1,000 times faster. So again, it's just you can have different engineering trade-offs. For something at a global scale, well, you do have to agree to these are the parameters that we're going to run, and that's going to work not so great. I guess it's like politics. If you've got to pick a single set of policies for a whole country, well, good luck making everyone happy with that. But you have something at a more local scale, well, you've probably got more consistency, and you can be happier. So I think that's really the truth of the world, is that the world is a patchwork which represents people, and people have all got different priorities and preferences and culture. So having a heterogeneous network works better. Trying to come up with a single set of rules that meet everyone's needs is an almost impossible task.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Good one. All right, so now everybody can go eat. There's lunch right outside. If you want, bring it back in here, sit at the table, enjoy yourself, and we're going to start back up again at 1:05. Thank you.